From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions. This is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. All right, so you want to buy a gun? Maybe you're about to file your income taxes. You better tell the truth on those official forms you're about to fill out. Thanks for joining us. That's kind of the crux of what we're talking about today. Yeah. With me are Greg Isaacs and our executive producer, Jeff McClain. And Hunter Biden's gun possession trial began Monday. That's what this is all about. Greg, he could face up to 25 years in prison if convicted on 3 counts against him.
Lori, the first time in history a sitting president's son has been criminally prosecuted, and Hunter Biden could be in a heap of trouble, as they say. He is facing 3 felony counts. 2 of the counts deal with making a false statement on a federal ATF form, the 4473 form. The other is possessing a firearm, being a unlawful user of controlled substances. So very high stakes in a federal courthouse involving Hunter Biden.
And Greg, I want to get into that actual form. We have it. We have the ATF provides it. If you could find it on their website, that's the form. But it's on the issue is the one that's on the second page, highlighted here. It's point F. It's a checkbox, yes or no, and it reads: "Are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance?" And then it comes with a little warning: "The use or possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized for medical and recreational purposes in the state where you reside." Point being here is that, and this is what prosecutors are arguing, is that he checked no, because you don't get your gun if you check no on the form, or if you check yes on the form. You're not supposed to have a gun, this federal law, if you are a drug user. But the prosecution and the defense read that question very differently. Are you an unlawful user of? Now, yesterday, day before, tomorrow?
Or have you been?
Ever.
Yes.
Very interesting. And, anytime you see this word on a federal form, 18 U.S.C. 1001, that is a sign that basically says beware, danger, 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 because that means you're acknowledging you can be prosecuted if you make a false statement. And it can be for a firearm purchase. It can be for your tax returns. It can be for a variety of things, federal Q clearances, etc. But it's interesting, and it kind of reminds me of Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland, when Alice went down the hole and she was talking to the Mad Hatter, and she said, "I can't understand a word you say." And he says, "Well, Alice, my dear, it's Jabberwocky. Words mean what I say they mean."
I see where you're going with this.
Here's what the defense is. Let's put that language back up there. The defense is saying there's a difference between are you or have you been a drug user. So again, they're trying to freeze frame this language to the present. Are you an unlawful user of or addicted to, and make it a very laser focused requirement that I suppose if you were clean and sober the day you bought the gun, and you weren't the day before, under the defense theory, you could check no.
But then, if you're a famous person and you wrote a memoir,
yes.
and you spoke candidly, very openly about your past drug use, and it just happened to coincide with the dates when you, in the same area in which you bought the gun.
Well, Lori, you can get it, Jeff, a team of lawyers. You can get the best legal minds, legal talents, and it typically comes down to one thing. No matter how much legal firepower you have, can you get your client to shut up? And how many times do we see people writing books, sending texts, sending tweets, and Hunter Biden at the time probably sounded like a good idea to write a memoir called Beautiful Things, where you highlight and talk about your addiction and your recovery. Well, lo and behold, you're in federal court being prosecuted, looking at 25 years, and the prosecution enters a copy of the book in the record as you talk about being addicted, and you pinpoint times that, ooh, by the way, just happened to coincide with the time that you had this gun. So really remarkable, and also there's evidence in this case where they executed a search warrant, and Hunter, which he's acknowledged, had a drug addiction. But it really, we find out in kind of looking in at some of his inner communications, text, etc., he had a raging drug problem, spending thousands of dollars.
Allegedly crack cocaine at one
Sending
point.
a message where he had slept on top of a car.
Yeah.
Right. So really, you're seeing a lot of evidence. But what's interesting about this case, if you look at how many people, how many adults own firearms? 80 million Americans. Okay. Each year, approximately only 1,000 of those 80 million are investigated for making a false statement on your complaint.
How about that?
Less than 0.00001%. But again, that doesn't make it right or wrong. But very interesting. But basically, this case, Jeff and Lori, boils down to paragraph F, and it's going to be interesting what that jury thinks.
Well, like we said, he could face up to 25 years in prison. What about regular folks? I mean, I know you said that 1,000 people have been looked at, investigated for this. But what is the takeaway for John Q. Public for stuff like this, for income taxes and other things? It's a big deal, obviously, when you lie or provide incorrect information. You may not realize you are. Maybe you made a mistake. What kind of trouble
Shaved
could
a
you
few
face?
bucks off the taxes.
Yeah.
Well, everybody kind of winks and nods and does this or does that. What I tell clients, and we put it in writing in addition to the information on these federal forms. Again, if you see 18 U.S.C. 1001, you better have a mental image of Pinocchio and a mental image of bars. You need to be not 99% accurate. You need to be 100% accurate. But it's amazing how people will call and go, well, it's asking if I were convicted, but I was convicted 10 years ago. Should I answer yes or no? And I'm like, you've got to answer truthfully.
And one thing I wanted to point out, like this, the drug use aspect of this doesn't seem particularly applicable, but the thing that we see all the time is the question that's, I believe, 3 points above that, on page 1. It's, are you the actual transferee buyer of all the firearms on this form and continuation sheets? That is the straw purchase component of this, so that if you buy a gun for somebody who isn't allowed to have a gun, that's where they get you. And we've seen that one, for example, in the Austin East shooting. That is a straw purchase, and that is not allowed. So I would say that's probably the more likely one that they get people on. I also think it's going to be interesting, and I'm interested that this is coming into evidence, is Hunter Biden's laptop, which we've heard more about that than probably any other laptop on earth. But that's something to be brought up.
Tough case to defend. Yes,
it is. And let's talk about how literally with all these other cases we talked about the Trump trial and how long the openings were. The defense was 3 hours, prosecution, not to be one-upped, 4 hours. The opening statements in this, it's remarkable, and this goes to show you how both sides are laser focused on this case and how simple they're trying to make it. Prosecution, 23 minutes, the defense, less than an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now think about that. I have never, even in our small sessions court, seen an opening statement from a prosecutor last 23 minutes.
Well,
Wow.
Greg, I want you point that out, because this trial was within a fraction of an inch of not even happening. There was a plea deal.
Okay, and here's two interesting things. And like most things that we see in these high-profile cases, it's like another week. It must be another politician getting prosecuted in a case that's fraught with problems. So that's true. There are some issues in this case because recently the Fifth Circuit, in a case called United States versus Daniels, struck down the federal statute 922 G3 that Hunter Biden's charged with, and said someone was convicted. They had a gun in the car, 2 guns, some drugs, and they were convicted for being someone intoxicated and possessing firearms. Well, the court said there was no proof that they were intoxicated at the time they had the guns, therefore this statute is unconstitutionally overbroad and vague. So that's why you see these lawyers trying to split hairs, like, have you been addicted, or are you under the influence
And did you
of
write
drugs?
a book and say you were?
and you know, I think the next edition of Hunter Biden's book may not be called Beautiful Things. It may be called Stupid Things You Shouldn't Say.
Goodness.
When you're under a federal investigation. But, you know, again, you've got issues for appeal. And Jeff, back to your point, there was a plea agreement that was a diversion agreement, which meant that it was a conditional plea that would have never been on his record. And they went before the federal judge, and the federal judge said, because what the plea agreement tried to do was bind the United States forever prosecuting Hunter Biden for any related or unrelated conduct. And the judge said, I'm not approving a get out of jail free for everything you've ever done. So, you know,
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you know we always do.
Well, don't. You can.
What do you think the outcome will be here?
You know, this case is very simple. When you have a prosecutor that talks for 23 minutes, that tells me they're more confident than a prosecutor that talks for 4 hours.
Yeah.
I predict that Hunter Biden's going to get hit, and he's going to get convicted. And you know, the most powerful evidence is Hunter Biden's own words in Beautiful Things, his computer, his cell phone. So there you go. But the lesson to be learned from this is when you fill out a federal form, you know, read the question and answer truthfully. And if you have some
very
pause
carefully.
on how to answer the question, that to me should be your own internal red flag, because these questions aren't designed for you to angst over. It's
Or to
not
trip you up.
To trip you up.
Yeah.
It's pretty dadgum clear. Are you purchasing the gun for yourself or someone else? I mean, pretty simple.
Yeah. Yes or no.
Are you an addicted person? You know, I don't know. I mean, if you had an addiction, like here's a scenario. Let's say you get out of rehab.
Right, and
Lori,
he said he was in rehab at the time.
Well, you get out of rehab, and a month later you're still clean and sober, and you buy that gun. Are you an addicted person? I don't know. Look, I mean,
You're asking the jury.
It's a question for the jury, but it is just remarkable, and think of the consequences for look at how benign and small those boxes are. Check yes or no.
Right.
And because apparently under the theory of the government, he checked the wrong box, Hunter Biden is now looking at 25 years of his liberty behind bars.
And we will be watching. And let's
will
talk
be
more
watching.
at 5:30, shall we?
Let's do.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks.